Hello, students. Today we are going to focus on transition words. And for this workshop, we will specifically look at the transition words that at their base form are and or but. And we're going to learn new words that we can use instead of those very basic words that tend to be overused. So let's go. Transitions, why are they important? So one thing that can really take writing to the next level is to have variety. And so the two easiest ways to bring variety to your writing is sentence length. So you want to have short sentences, longer sentences, a variety of punctuation within those sentences, ask questions, um, use different words and phrases to introduce your sentence. And number two, which is what this workshop will focus on, is to have a variety of words. So you don't want to be using the same words over and over and over. You want to try as much as you can to avoid repetition in your word choice. And one way we can work on this is by our transition word choice. Often we use the same transition words over and over and over, specifically and but. They are overused because they are so necessary in our writing. So here's the definition of transition words. They are used to link words, phrases, or sentences, and they help the reader to progress from one idea to the next idea. So we can see this as adding on to an idea, showing contrast to an idea that we just said, like stating the opposite or an alternative view. We use transition words to move us through time. So that would look like first, then, finally. And they're really important because they help the reader to follow your train of thought. And so they keep them moving in the same direction that you want them to be going in. So again, we will focus today on and but, because they are very, very common. So and is used, again, to add information, to reinforce ideas, and to express agreement with something that was previously stated or written. This is probably one of the most important slides of this workshop. So here are words we can use instead of boring old little and. So we have additionally, furthermore, moreover, similarly, correspondingly, and comparatively. So when you're writing and you have sentences and you've used and several times, think about inserting one of these words, if it fits, to replace an and. So I'm going to show you some examples I pulled up from your writing. So example one, this is the first sentence as the student wrote it. Warm-up laps were nearly a mile, and stretches and pre-workout exercises were a workout in itself. Totally fine sentence. It is perfectly correct the way it's written. But let's notice what happens if we take one of those ands and change it to a more academic transition word, because this sentence has two ands very closely placed to each other, because this one is combining the sentences and this one is combining the compound subject, stretches and pre-workout exercises. So if we change one of those, we end up with warm-up laps were nearly a mile. Additionally, stretches and pre-workout exercises were a workout in itself. So we can add this additionally instead of the and here. It adds variety to this sentence, and it really indicates to the reader that what we said here is now going to be added to. We see this add is like a signpost to the reader, right? not only were there warm-up laps, but we also are adding to that idea that there were stretches and pre-workout exercises. So a more academic transition adds variety to your writing, keeps the reader engaged, easy breezy. So example number 2, the main thing is to be able to overcome our fears and do not be afraid of failures, and everything will turn out. So similar to the last example, we have and twice and quite close to each other in the sentence. So what can we do in this instance to replace one of the ands? I noticed that this fear that is talked about is then almost given an example of a fear, because it says to overcome our fears and do not be afraid of failures. So I chose actually to not use one of the and transitions that was on the slide, but to use a transition that would indicate almost the idea of for example. And here I put specifically. So now we have the main thing is to be able to overcome our fears. Specifically, do not be afraid of failures, and everything will turn out. So this helps guide the reader a little more directly into the thought that we want to overcome our fears, and specifically our fear of failure, and then everything will turn out. So you can see that, again, not only does it add variety, it sounds more academic, and it definitely directs the reader a little more precisely in the direction that we are thinking ourselves. Awesome. So transition word number 2 is little but. And but expresses that there's evidence to the contrary or alternative that's going to be presented. So we're wanting the reader to think, okay, that's what he said, but now we're changing, right? We're showing the opposite or a contrasting view. And so here are some words to help achieve that thought. However, on the contrary, in contrast, although, and on the other hand. So these are probably review for you guys, but just to think, if I can add a couple of these into my writing regularly, and then of course there are far more transition words that convey this idea, and I'm actually going to share with you some resources here in a minute that will give you comprehensive lists, very in-depth lists of words that you can choose from. But for now, I just challenge you to start using these small lists and really start incorporating them into your writing more regularly. Okay, so some examples in your writing. It takes a lot to admit a failure, but it is a good thing. So again, sentence is totally fine the way it is. We're going to look at using a different transition word instead of but, because it is used so often. So we could also say, it takes a lot to admit a failure. However, it is a good thing. So same idea, right, is conveyed. The same idea saying, even though it takes a lot to admit a failure, this is a good thing. However, being, again, a bit more academic, maybe, sounding, and if you've used but several times already in the writing and you want to come up with a different way to convey that same idea, however, is a good option. Number 2 example, at first I thought that this is exactly what my mother told me. I had to get out of rock bottom. But soon I took into a realization that I should just accept it. What is the point in fixing something I messed up? So for this example, and this but here, I chose to use the phrase on the other hand. And what I think this does for the writing and to help the reader is it really points their attention to the fact that you're totally switching gears. So at first, I thought that this is exactly what my mother told me. I had to get out of rock bottom. On the other hand, I soon took into a realization that I should just accept it. What is the point in fixing something I messed up? So one reason it's good to use these transitions that are a little more advanced than the basic and or but is because as readers, we get so used to reading and but, we gloss over them, and the meaning of what the writer is trying to convey gets a little bit lost. So this saying, on the other hand, makes us stop and think, oh, we're switching. We're switching our viewpoint from whatever was said here to what's now going to be said here. So it just brings more pause to the mind of the reader, and it helps them, again, to really be on the same page as you are as the writer, which is what we want. We want our message to be fully received and heard. Awesome. So here are the additional resources as promised. So these are 2 websites that you can visit. You can also obviously Google any website on your own, but to make it a little bit easier, I will show you one example. So here we have really nice vocabulary boxes for different transitions that we would use. So this first one is for addition, which would include and. So look how many more options to say this and convey this to your reader. And certain ones will work better in certain situations, and you as a writer can choose what best conveys your thoughts. We have some for introduction, when you're referencing something. And then here are the contrast ones. So this would be, again, more words to replace but as a transition. There's our on the other hand. And then if you're going to concede to another point or a counter argument, these are great ways to introduce that and transition into that idea. But again, just look at all these transition words. And I, as a writer, definitely still go back and look at lists like this because I get stuck using the same ones over and over. It's grown from and or but to be a lot of the same ones that I rely on. So from time to time, I'll look at these, or also you can use the thesaurus as an option, or synonyms when you highlight in your writing. So that is that. Okay, so that pretty much is the end of this workshop. What I will say to close is that I now challenge you to go back and try to revise an essay that you have written, maybe one that you're revising now for class, that you can try and see where you have words, transitioning words and but, and maybe try to insert some of these from the list given in the workshop and see if you can make your writing have more variety and also sound more academic, and just bring it to that next level of writing. So good luck with that and have a great day.